On behalf of Town and Gown and Old Dominion University, welcome to the 2020 Founders Day virtual event. Thank you for joining us today as we celebrate the founding of our university. This year, we are honoring the university's resilience and leadership over the past 30 years. It is an honor to introduce the 8th president of Old Dominion University, John R. Broderick, to deliver opening remarks. In the past 2 years, he received the President's Award from the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators and the Community Leaders Award from the Urban League of Hampton Roads, and was named First Citizen of Hampton Roads by the Chamber of Commerce. He was appointed to the Norfolk International Airport's Board of Commissioners and also led the Council of Presidents in Virginia for Conference USA. At the request of students, the Kate and John R. Broderick Dining Commons was named after the President and First Lady for spearheading inclusive initiatives and their commitment to diversity and student success. During his presidency, the university has received over $1 billion in new resources, including the largest gift in its history, a $37 million donation to establish the Berry Art Museum. Most recently, Old Dominion received an additional $29 million from the state to increase the number of graduates as part of the Tech Talent Investment Program. Ladies and gentlemen, President Broderick.
2020 has been an unprecedented year of change and challenge for the world. Resilient is the perfect word I would use to describe the Monarch response. As a community of courageous and caring individuals, we have come together to continue delivering outstanding education and providing support to our students and staff to reign responsibly and to stay safe. In the spring, we created the Rise to the Challenge Fund to assist monarchs facing financial hardships and unexpected expenses due to COVID-19. And to date, the fund has raised over $96,000. Even as we are adapting to and overcoming the effects of the pandemic, we remain vigilant and creative in our commitment to coastal resilience. And our new Institute of Coastal Adaptation and Resilience will sit across the street from what will be the Elizabeth Rivers Project's new headquarters on Colley Avenue to promote collaboration. In an innovative job-sharing approach, when we hire the executive director of ICAR, that person will also serve as the City of Norfolk's senior strategic resilient strategist. Since the founding of the university in 1930, its talented leaders and faculty have steered this institution through decades of change and facilitated its transcendence into one of the country's best public institutions. It's fitting that this year's Founders Day keynote speaker is one of the university's recent, strong, and powerful leaders, Dr. James V. Cook, or Jim, as he's known to many of you. Dr. Cook actually hired me as a vice president here to get my start at Old Dominion. And he has led Old Dominion from 1990 to 2001, is the Board of Visitors Professor of Economics and Emeritus President of the university. Dr. Cook has published numerous books and articles on a host of topics, including economic perspectives on higher education, intercollegiate athletics, discrimination and affirmative action, and TQM. His book, The Caterpillar Way, made the New York Times top 10 list for business in the fall of 2014. He has served as a consultant or expert witness for more than 100 legal firms, corporations, and universities. Additionally, he has led or been a part of teams commissioned by the presidents or board of trustees of more than 36 universities to evaluate the strategic positions of these institutions. Before he came to ODU, he was the president of the University of Montana, and he has been identified as one of the 100 most effective college presidents in the United States in research funded by the Exxon Foundation. Dr. Cook holds a BA from Illinois State and a PhD in economics from Northwestern. He's been awarded honorary doctorates from universities in Korea, Japan, and of course, the United States. Please welcome Dr. Jim Cook.
Thank you, President Broderick, for your kind words. I'll have some nice things to say about you in a few moments. This is the 90th birthday of Old Dominion University. And it goes almost without saying that any institution that has lasted 90 years has exhibited some resilience and persistence and commitment and idealism and innovation. Old Dominion University, I think, over its 90 years has exhibited all of those things. I'm going to now start by talking about resilience in terms of intercollegiate athletics. You might ask me, well, why intercollegiate athletics? Well, they are the university's front porch in the sense that many people, this is the first thing they see about the university rather than some of the other things or perhaps are the reasons why we're really here. But another important reason is that our intercollegiate athletic teams and the coaches and the athletes exhibited resilience over the years and persistence and lots of success. And I want to start by talking about baseball, and some of you recognize some of the people in this slide. They're all baseball monarchs who have played in the World Series. The most prominent name there, of course, is Justin Verlander, who has been conspicuously successful, one of the most successful major league pitchers in Major League Baseball over the last decade to 15 years. But there's also Dan Hudson and Ryan Yarborough, who have pitched in the World Series. And this year in the World Series, Matt Quatraro, a former Monarch, was a coach. So these are individuals who not only were successful at Old Dominion, they went on to be successful elsewhere and exhibited that persistence and resilience we were just talking about. This will be trivia question number one. I think lots of you who've been around the university recognize these faces. On the left, of course, is Wendy Leary, who's the most successful women's basketball coach of all time at Old Dominion in terms of wins and losses. And on the right is Blaine Taylor, who holds the record for winning the most Monarch basketball games as a coach. And they're both cutting down nets, and they both won lots and lots of CAA championships. How successful have the basketball teams been? Well, the men's team has won almost 1,400 games, including almost 77% at Chartway Arena. The women have won almost 1,100 games, including more than 74% at Chartway Arena. In every game, there has to be a winner and a loser. So when Old Dominion is coming up with these kind of percentages, that's pretty impressive. What games do I remember the most? Well, here's a game that really exhibits persistence and resilience. This is Old Dominion's 3 overtime victory over Villanova in the NCAA in 1995. Petey Sessom scored 35 points. And that's a very memorable game because it was one in which it didn't look like we were going to win many times, but our team persisted, and so did the coaches. Here's one that from the Lady Monarchs that immediately comes to mind. It's an overtime victory against Stanford in the NCAA semifinals in 1997. This was no freak because we had earlier defeated Stanford in the season. So we beat them twice, even though they were ranked number 1 and number 2 in the country. This is one that I remember, even though we lost. We lost on a last-second tip-in to Butler in 2011 in the NCAAs, and Butler then went on to be second. I think this is the team I think was most successful. But here's my trivia question number 2. Who's this guy in the picture? Well, if you're a Monarch basketball team, you know that's Kent Bazemore, who had a very successful career at Old Dominion, went on to play professionally, and in fact is still playing professionally 10 years later with Sacramento in the NBA. On the Lady Monarch side, there's one particular Lady Monarch I want to call out. Yes, we had people like Ann Donovan and Keisha Penichero and so forth, but here's a young lady who's really, in recent years, assembled an important career as a scholar. Natalie Diaz is now labeled a major American poet. She did play professional basketball game in Europe, won a MacArthur Fellowship, very prestigious, and now is a creative writing faculty member at Arizona State University. Talking about athletics and persistence and success, you cannot eliminate or not talk about field hockey. That's Beth Anders on the left. And during my time as president at Old Dominion, they won the national championship 5 times. They were always nationally ranked in the top few and always very successful. One of the reasons for their success was this young lady on the right. That's trivia question number 3. Who is this? Well, the answer is Samantha Salvia, who was a good field hockey player, but was our first Rhodes Scholar. So an all-around individual who showed success and persistence and resilience. No discussion of athletics at Old Dominion could eliminate football, which brought lots and lots of excitement to the campus. Here's another trivia question for you. Who's this guy on the right? Who's number 14? Well, that's Taylor Heineke, the most successful quarterback in our history and one of the most successful quarterbacks in NCAA history. He went on, of course, to have a professional career as a quarterback as well. This is one of my favorite pictures because the story of Old Dominion and of resilience and persistence and success relates very substantially to the physical expansion of the campus. Here's an overhead view, and isn't it impressive? But it wasn't always that way. Look at this, folks. That's Hampton Boulevard, the way it used to be. And that's the 4400 Club for some of you who used to spend some time there. That's the way it used to look. Jim Jarrett said when a coach was recruiting an athlete and maybe picked that athlete up at the airport, he counseled them to go up Route 64 and then come across Terminal Boulevard and then come down from the south to approach Old Dominion University from the north. He said, don't come up from the south because what they're going to see is not so attractive. And he said, if you have to bring them up that way, then arrange to drop your keys on the floor so that they duck down when you're going through the less attractive spots. This is what Hampton Boulevard and the neighborhood looks like now. Of course, that's the Marriott property, and isn't it impressive at night? And on the right there, you'll see 43rd Street. And if you've been around the university for any period of time, any longer period of time, you know that that's not the way it used to look. How much of an improvement that is. Here are some other improvements. Upper left, that's the Broderick Dining Columns, which is an impressive facility. On the right, that's Scotland House in the west part of the campus in the Rent-A-Quad. The lower left is the TED itself, which now has Chartway Arena in it. On the right is the recently opened, very impressive Barry Art Museum. Here are some other impressive facilities in the village, the Barry Arts Building. In the upper right, many of you may have not have seen. This is the university's Virginia Beach Center, which enrolls impressively large numbers of students and makes it much easier for students to access higher education. And those on the lower right know that this is Dave Harnage. Mr. Bubba was his nickname. Well, Dave Harnage, our business vice president, more than any other individual, visualized this, made it happen, did all the hard work, and I got lots of credit for saying, okay, we want to do this, but Dave is an example of somebody who made this come to fruition, a very impressive worker and individual. A final scene of the campus is one you probably haven't seen before. This is a scene from the water from the Elizabeth River that gives you a different perspective. Isn't that impressive? And needless to say, that's not what it looked like in 1930 when the university started. None of this would have come about without some impressive donors, some very generous people who had foresight and vision and believed in Old Dominion University. On the left, of course, is Barry Kornblau, whose name comes on several different facilities and buildings at Old Dominion University. He's an alum, lives in Richmond. In the middle are Dick and Carolyn Berry. In addition to being very generous donors, Dick was the rector of the Board of Visitors when I came to Old Dominion University. On the right is Frank Batten, who in a sense represents the Batten family, his wife Jane and his son Frank Jr., very generous donors who've made a huge difference, not only at Old Dominion University, but in higher education in Virginia, speaking larger. Some other donors I need to mention, that on the left, that's George Dragas. He's a stand-in in some ways for his family because his daughter Helen is also a generous donor. In the middle is Ted Constant. Now, I'll tell you a Ted story. Ted could not hear very well. So when I went to talk to him at Westminster Canterbury in Virginia Beach, we couldn't sit in the regular areas because he couldn't hear, so I had to shout. So we went then into the weightlifting room, which had padded sides and so forth. And that way I could shout and he could shout and we could both hear each other. Ted, though, was a very generous guy, attended all the Monarch games and made a real difference. My office at Old Dominion University is in Constant Hall. On the right is Mark Strom, after whom the Strom College of Business is named, and after whom most of our entrepreneurial efforts have evolved. Again, an impressive donor and an alum who's made a huge difference at Old Dominion University. In the background, while all these building projects were occurring, there were things like Teletechnet and distance learning developing. In the early 1990s, I thought, gee, we can do some precedent-setting things in distance learning if we can send courses out to people in remote locations. Somebody who really believed in that is the woman on the right, Dr. Ian Raymond Savage, who ran our Teletechnet and distance learning programs for many years. A very impressive individual, very energetic, visionary, and a person who attended to details, which meant that Teletechnet was going to work. Now, those of you who know the campus in the middle top, that's Gornto Hall, named after Albert Buck Gornto, an alum, former member of the Board of Visitors, who went on to be the president of Sovereign Bank, and his gift made that building possible. Now, I'll tell you another story here, and the funding of the Teletechnet program came about because Dave Harnage was able to pipe a distance learning course and a lot of remote individuals into Governor George Allen's office in Richmond. The rector of the Board of Visitors at that time was Arnold McKinnon, who was the CEO of Norfolk Southern. Well, Arnold got us the appointment, and then Dave piped in these courses, and George Allen, I'll have to tell you, was impressed because we hooked him up with ships at sea, with people at remote locations, and he said, I can see this can really be done. And he then gave us several $1 million to push the program to fruition. So that was an important time in the history of the university. And now during COVID-19, we can appreciate what a difference that has made in terms of our ability to do higher education. Something else that was happening in the background was the President's Lecture Series, which started in 1990 and 1991. I am showing the pictures of only a couple of the people who've spoken because there have been more than 100 individuals who have talked to the campus. The idea here was to have an open and free marketplace for ideas and to bring to campus people who were saying things that we might not necessarily agree with, but would provoke discussion and cause us to perhaps rethink what our positions were. Lower left, that's Newt Gingrich, who was the Speaker of the House. You'll recognize Bill Cosby, who also spoke at graduation. That's the Reverend Al Sharpton, who you see on TV now, especially on Morning Joe. And that's Phyllis Schlafly, who came to the university and attracted a large crowd. When I came to Old Dominion University, one of the things that I noticed was that the faculty, staff, and student body of the university did not really accurately reflect the population we were serving. Specifically, we didn't have nearly as many African Americans and Hispanics and Asians on campus as the population of Virginia had, or especially Hampton Roads. So I made a commitment we were going to change those kinds of things and make some progress. And we did over time. And I'm in a moment going to show you some numbers. On the left, you'll recognize Augustine Ago, our provost. And then there's Alonzo Brandon, our vice president for institutional advancement. Alonzo and I used to play lots of basketball in the 1990s, and we had a basketball team that once won the intramural championship. In the middle is Hugo Owens, Dr. Hugo Owens, a dentist, but a civil rights pioneer in Hampton Roads and the first African-American rector of the Old Dominion University Board of Visitors. Hugo was a champion of civil rights, but a great guy, an individual who made an immense and very positive impression at Old Dominion University. Next, there's Oliver Purnell, an alum who was the first Black head coach at Old Dominion University and led the basketball Monarchs to lots of success. On the right, many of you, of course, will recognize Cecilia Tucker. I count as one of my very best appointments at Old Dominion, hiring Cece in 1991 as the head of our community relations programs. Cece opened doors. She raised consciousness. She was a very important person in terms of producing the numbers that I'm now going to show you. This is a graph that shows the percentage of Black students at Old Dominion University since 1994. You'll see that the number's gone from 14% to 28%. A pretty impressive climb, but doubling over that period of time, so that the student body of the university now looks much more like that of Hampton Roads and the population of Virginia. What's that red bar? What does that signify? Why is that important? Well, 2012 is the first year when Old Dominion University enrolled more Black students than Norfolk State. Think about that. Old Dominion University enrolled more Black students in 2012 than Norfolk State. And now in 2018, 2020, it's not even close. So we have made, or at least made strides toward making Old Dominion University open and inviting and acceptable to Black students. But the same thing has been true for Hispanic students. Percentage has gone up from 1.62 to 8.03 over the period of about 25 years. And again, an impressive change, and one that I think will continue to occur as the population of Virginia and Hampton Roads continues to evolve. When we talk about diversity, though, we have to, I think, bear in mind that it's not just race, but many other things, including gender, that are important. Roseanne Renta, of course, was president of the university for 7 years, and I think was the second woman appointed to a public presidency in Virginia. On the right is Joanne Gora, who was provost for 9 years, but it's not so much of a technical sense, in a real sense, she was the first woman president of a public university in Virginia. In 1995, I went on leave and Joanne Gora was appointed acting president, and she was the first woman to lead a public 4-year university in Virginia. She went on to become president of the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and then Ball State University. When we talk about resilience, rising sea levels and water and flooding immediately come to mind, and the pictures on the right show you that. Upper right is a downtown Norfolk picture. Lower right, of course, is 49th Street. And the question is, what are we going to do about this? And that's one of the questions that our researchers have been addressing full blast, but also, how do we deal with it? How do we become resilient? So at a time when resilience is the theme of this particular presentation, Larry Atkinson and his colleagues are showing us the ways in which not only we, but Virginia can become more resilient. I think we will become a national leader in this regard. Resilient leadership is a necessity. John Broderick has been resilient and very successful. He set all kinds of records. He's the longest serving president. He's raised more money outside than any other person, any other president. Record campus construction, record enrollments, and lots of legislative triumphs. As I indicated before, he's an individual who is resilient, doesn't give up easily. Several times, the legislature allocated additional funding to Old Dominion University and then took it away because revenue forecasts were not as high as they thought. But he came back. He is sort of the energetic bunny. He doesn't give up. He's persistent. He's devoted, and he always came back and did better the next time. Faculty resilience, they're very important, and no discussion of faculty resilience could not include Bill Whitehurst. Now, Bill has been around off and on teaching political science for 70 years. He said this year he's going to retire. I'll believe in that when I see it, folks. But he is an image, a picture that everyone associates with Old Dominion. Another important person in my mind, because I used him as a consultant and talked to him quite a bit, is Ken Daly in art. 51 years of service, he's now retired, but he was a very important person in terms of advocating and determining what the development of the arts at Old Dominion University turned out to be. And I'd get in trouble if I didn't mention one of my colleagues who's been around a long time and still is doing lots and lots of very productive things, and that's Vinod Agarwal in economics. If you read the newspaper, you know that he's constantly quoted in the newspaper. He makes lots of presentations, and he's been a member of many statewide groups doing forecasting and the like, and is a very, very important in terms of the economic life of Virginia. Finally, let me stop with, this is sort of trivia question number whatever. Who's that on the left? Well, that's Donna Cook and Jim Cook, 52 years ago when we were married. This is us on the right. Those of you who know Milwaukee, Wisconsin will recognize these are mugs from Mater's German restaurant in Milwaukee. The point is, we're still around 52 years later and married. You can tell that Donna hasn't aged very much at all. It's Jim Cook who's the older guy in the picture. About Donna, let me say this. Each year, over 11 years that I was president, she hosted and arranged more than 40 lunches and dinners, and on several occasions had to host those on her own because I had to leave for some other commitment. So when you think about persistence and resilience and commitment, don't forget presidents' wives and husbands and people who are serving and doing good work on behalf of Old Dominion University. With that, I'm going to stop talking, but let me say that because this presentation has been pre-recorded, you can't really ask me questions live, but I would encourage you to send me an email if you have a reminiscence or a memory that you think I ought to know about, or you simply want to ask me a question about something I said or something else relating to the university. My email is pretty simple. It's jkoch@odu.edu. So thanks for listening, and go Monarchs.
Thank you, Dr. Cook, for those inspiring words. Now please welcome Randy Luigi, President of Town and Gown and ODU graduate of the class of 1969, for the presentation of the Rita M. Costello Community Service Award.
The Rita M. Costello Community Service Award of Old Dominion University's Town and Gown is given each year at our Founders Day celebration. The award recognizes an individual from the larger community who exemplifies community service and has demonstrated unusual concern and commitment for serving others. This year's recipient is Mr. Robert Schaub, founding artistic director of the Norfolk Street Choir Project, a group he created while he was the director of music ministry at Freemason Street Baptist Church. Mr. Schaub created the vision and built a sustained team of staff, board, and volunteers to serve the social relationship needs of individuals affected by poverty and homelessness. The Norfolk Street Choir Project began in 2016, serving breakfast and offering a chance to learn and sing in a performing choir once a week. Now, as an independent organization since July 2020, the Street Choir is a hub for many services in the city, including medical care, housing assistance, clothing, showers, and other resources. And its artistic activity has recently expanded to include the Expressive Arts Collaboration in partnership with the EVMS Graduate Art Therapy and Counseling Program. Mr. Shelp is not new to the Hampton Roads music scene. He has worked with the Virginia Symphony Orchestra as chorus master and conductor since 1997. He has been active in mission and ministry all of his life, having served the communities and the congregations in Pennsylvania and Virginia for more than 30 years. As the founder of the Norfolk Street Choir Project, he has begun a new and exciting organization that is building a network of similar projects across the country. The Norfolk Street Choir Project is one of 9 founding members of the National Alliance of Music in Vulnerable Communities. Town and Gown is very pleased to recognize Robert Shelp as the Rita M. Costello Community Service Award recipient for 2020.
Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy this video highlighting Mr. Shelp and the work of the Norfolk Street Choir Project.
Every single person on the planet Earth has been hurt, has had dreams shattered, has had their soul crushed. When you get up to sing for an audience, you're speaking to their humanity that is equal to yours. And that is an incredible gift that only you have. Let's go. Let's get up and open our folders and get going. How many of you are here for the first time today? One, you lying. 1, 2, 3. Would you welcome our new members? Glad you're here. I knew when we began that one of the biggest elements of this was going to be the building of trust. What would make them respond to an invitation to sing in a choir with somebody they didn't know? I want to get back to pitch matching. The more we're singing in tune and staying on pitch, the more people are going to want to hear us, right? So, what do you use to power the voice? Air. Air. Thank you very much. Sit up nice and tall. Take a nice big breath of air and sing do. Do. There's this whole lie that's out there that is you can sing only if you were born with it. Have you learned things about singing since you've been here? Yeah. This is a learnable skill. It was important to me from the beginning that they get some real teaching. Would you turn please to number 16? The words Gloria are syncopated. Watch. Gloria, Gloria, in excelsis Deo. Right, all of those are right on the beat, but glo is between the beats. As a conductor, what you're going to see from me is a strong first beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Gloria and Gloria, in excelsis Deo. Yeah, that's it.
Bob is basically our inspiration. And for me personally, I look at Bob as a father figure because he gives perfect guidance.
You can come in and you can be just as down as you possibly can be, things going on with you. And the first thing you do when you see him, he's smiling. And the very last thing that you see about him, he's smiling.
I'm really proud of you. You have become really responsive. That is a skill. And man, I appreciate your trust. It's exciting working with you. It's fun every week. I hope you feel like you're learning some things.
Hope is raining down.
I love the street choir. I really do.
My soul is soaring high.
It's part of my journey.
And the sharpest words wanna cut me down.
To have people not only have an outlet for their own artistic expressions, but a way to build a sense that you belong. That sets some fundamental basics that most human beings thrive on, require, I think, need to survive.
I started getting teary-eyed, but then as I sat there, I said, well, I am still a part because I'm going to support my choir and my family.
And I'm marching on to the beat of drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me.
Congratulations again to our award recipient, Mr. Robert Shelp. We would like to thank Town and Gown for its support of Old Dominion University and for the co-sponsorship of this event. We would also like to acknowledge the work of Cecilia Tucker, Assistant to the President for Community Relations, and the members of the Founders Day Committee, the Offices of Community Engagement and Strategic Communication and Marketing, University Archivist Steve Bookman, and Video Services. We will close out this celebration by joining the Dean Chorale in singing the Alma Mater. Thank you for joining us.
Hail to thee, our alma mater, blue and silver.